So last year, when we were in Paris, I got inspired to enable the GNU community a little more to make nice timing applications with cheap equipment. So I set myself out to build the cheapest GPSDO just yet. Bear in mind, it's a work in progress, but there is some progress. But I don't quite like the normal DIY approach that you find on GitHub most of the time, which is a lot of discrete components, analog PLLs, discriminators, a lot to solder, long warm-up times, Arduinos with mini USB, endless debugging, and analog debugging of that. I'm a software engineer, I don't like that. Those things are often afraid of open windows, and I said in my mind, maybe we can fix that. So goals are no clock BS drift. By that I mean, if I just sync my time once and I record over hours, it still has to be the same amount of symbols. The GPSDO must not have a residual drift that is uncompensated for, that the recording is shorter or longer. That is very good for TDOA applications and simplifies the process a lot. It should have a quick warm-up and correct the sawtooth effect, which is the alignment error between the clock and the GPS receiver and the PPS signal. You can see how this normally looks like, that you always have a plus minus 10, 50 nanosecond error on top of your PPS signal, by which you do your time synchronization. And yeah, I want to maintain less than 0.5 parts per billion, even if the window is open. This looks really neat. That's LIA M8F, where they played a really nice trick where the GPS receiver that knows a lot about its frequency offset is disciplining its own oscillator. That enables it to, within its DSP, already estimate the frequency offset and tune itself to compensate for that. For example, with the nav clock message that has the so-called clock bias, that is a regularly updated value of the drift between the receiver's clock and the GPS clock in nanoseconds per second. Just null that value if you control it and you have synchronized your clock. It's actually quite easy, and it's all software for what I'm concerned. So, and the sad thing about this module, it's the wrong weight. It's for LTE base stations, so 30.72, and it's also no longer recommended for new designs, but I really wanted something like that. And I should have read the publication of Mark Seboklis, who did a very nice analysis to such an approach. He DIY'd this with more of a textbook approach of an analog devices, a PLL to generate a 26 megahertz clock out of his 10 megahertz of an oscillator, disciplining the U-logs and doing all those funny games. This already looks like a much cleaner setup, more what I'm looking for. So let's make this even simpler. I replaced the microcontroller and the PLL and the little oscillator here to that completely by the Raspberry Pi 2040 by utilizing the CPU PLL, which when you set it to 104 megahertz, those are the settings of the PLL, you can actually generate quite a nice 26 megahertz signal, much better than I would have anticipated for a CPU clock. And that feeds directly into a U-Blocks receiver where I just soldered the clock out. And yeah, there's like $10 worth of components there. And by which with those components, I build a little test bed with the resampler as well as the OCXO, a little stabilized PVM DAC, and there's really not much to it. And this is a finished setup that I tested on the weekend the first time successfully, and it works. The blue chart, you can see the clock bias, the offset in nanoseconds per second, and when I try to null it, I have a really nice 10 megahertz clock. The nice thing is, once I approach this point, I also get this quantization error, the sawtooth effect we saw earlier. This is also reported by the uBlocks chip, and it's reported in picoseconds per second, so a factor 1,000 better than the clock bias. And when you're that synchronized, it is the clock bias. So my control loop is then switching to trying to null the quantization error. And as you can see, it actually works. Before it has a lock, it's still oscillating between plus minus 10 nanoseconds. And the moment I get a proper lock, I'm much closer to 1 nanosecond. And I found a bug, so that was with a broken control loop. I'm anticipating to perform even better. But this is already, 20x improvement over the datasheet. And it's actually physically correcting the quantization error instead of you having to do this later in software, which is quite nice. The files will be on GitHub, probably at the weekend. I'm from D-Drone, I'm a software engineer there. We detect drones, we do all kinds of fun stuff like this all day, and we're hiring, so that's a little thing for marketing here. I have leftover PCBs. If you want one, build this yourself. It's a really fun experiment to do. Thank you very much.